Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is PJ, and today I'm going to talk about the importance of contemplation. What is contemplation? What do I mean by it? And why is it something that I believe is very important for us to incorporate into our day-to-day lives? Contemplation is a way of being in the world and in our day-to-day life. It's an internal stance that we embody and that we take towards life and towards all beings and towards everything that we face in a day of our life. So, meditation and contemplation are similar in a lot of ways, but they're not the same thing. Although, in my perspective, both are as equally important, and there's no this or that. It's both are super important for us to incorporate into our lives if we want to grow spiritually and transform ourselves from inside out. So contemplation versus meditation, or the difference between the two, is that the meditation practice is one that you sit, quietly in the morning, at night, whenever, for a prolonged amount of time, maybe like 20 minutes or so or more, and you close your eyes. You sit there and you pay attention to your breath, and you try to cultivate mindfulness while you're in that state and your eyes are closed. Contemplation is like, how can we cultivate that state that we cultivate within our meditation practice? How can we cultivate that in our day-to-day life? Not just when we're on the meditation mat, not just when we're on the meditation cushion, but as we're going through our life, as we're talking to people, as we're doing our work, as we're going about doing our job, how do we bring that presence, that stillness that we feel on the cushion, our meditation cushion? How do we bring that into our day-to-day life? Because one thing that you will surely learn if you ever practice meditation, especially for a prolonged amount of time, is that it doesn't always necessarily translate into your day-to-day life. Yes, of course, it enhances your quality of life because of the degree of stillness that it brings into your life, that it brings into your heart, and it brings into your being, but it doesn't always end up being reflected as you're going about your life, as you're going about your day, as you're getting sucked into the different activities that the day offers. It doesn't always translate into those activities, and that's why contemplation is very important to incorporate into our life, especially our digitalized Western 21st century lives that are very busy, very notification filled, and so on and so forth. How do we bring that stillness of meditation into our day-to-day life? And that's when contemplation comes in. Contemplation is, as I said earlier, it's a way of being in the world, and it's an internal stance that we can take towards all life and towards life, as a whole. What do I mean by an internal stance? So it's like a knob on a radio. You know how you have to tune the radio to a certain frequency or to a certain station to hear it? It's like internally you have to turn that knob to contemplation. You have to set it on an internal stance. I'm taking this stance of contemplation because it's something that you have to focus on. And it's very paradoxical because part of what contemplation is a removal of trying to get to a certain goal, trying to have a certain outcome in mind, and trying to everything being a means to an end. It's like a big part of it is that that's not what it is. But at the same time, the paradoxical nature of it is that you do have to focus on it to set that internal stance in place, so to speak. So contemplation is a way of going about your life where you pay attention deeply to things around you, everything. And you refrain from labeling them, casting mental projections onto what they are, what they mean, their history to you, the grudges or grievances that you hold against them if they're people, and so on and so forth. Because Eckhart Tolle says this in his books, Power of Now and the New Earth, where when we go about our life, and if you want to actually learn about contemplation, like the internal stance of contemplation, I highly recommend books by Eckhart Tolle or any videos or anything by him, because I feel like he's a living embodiment of what that would look like. But basically, he talks about when we refrain from labeling things. So let's say the mind loves to label things because that's how it feels more at ease in the world. But basically, like when we're going about our life, when we see a tree, we say, oh, that's a tree. And then the moment we like label it as a tree, that's when we stop paying attention to it, because like we figured out what that is to us mentally. We put that label of tree on it. And then immediately we're like, okay, let's not pay attention to that. But if you were to look at that tree with the eyes of a child, with the eyes of a newborn baby that has never seen a tree before, that baby will look at a tree and be blown away by the magnificence of that thing that he's or she is looking at. He doesn't have a label for it. That baby doesn't have a label for it yet. The labels are given to us. The mom says that's a tree. The dad says that's a book. And we start labeling things at a very early age. And nothing against labeling, but every time we do something, we have to understand what it's doing to us, right? Like whatever activity, whatever habit we partake in, we have to not be on autopilot and just do these things. We have to be aware, okay, like if I'm gonna partake in labeling everything, which as a human we have to and we should, just know that when you do label it, your mind's tendency is to stop paying attention to it, because now it has identified what that is. So you don't need to pay attention to it anymore. It's like you already know what that thing is. You know if it's a threat or not. You know that if it's safe or not. So you don't have to worry about it. It's like our minds as like primal humans, so to speak, like at the beginning of time, the early humans, they had to always be on alert. Like, is this dangerous? Is this healthy? Is this good for me? Is this going to kill me? They had to be on alert at all times. So labeling, I feel like, is like our mind's way of saying, okay, let me make this thing easier, this survival task that the mind has to carry out easier by labeling things and identifying them as safe or not, so that we don't have to pay attention to them as much anymore. But like I was saying, when we do label these things, it reduces our awareness and the amount of attention that we're giving to each thing. So as Eckhart Tolle says, it's like we make that thing be a dead concept in our mind. So the moment you label the tree a tree, now that just became a dead concept. It's like the moment we put words on it, it's like we kill it. It's like we kill its vibrance, its aliveness. It just becomes another dead concept in our mind. Whereas when you look at the world with the eyes of a newborn baby, you see the majestic beauty of nature, of everything, of people. When we're not labeling things as good or bad, or right or wrong, or anything. And I'm not saying discernment is not important. Discernment is actually, the way I see discernment is like it's a removal of judgments, so you can see the true essence of something. Discernment is like seeing the true essence of something, and judgments sometimes hinder us to see the actual essence of something. It's like a person who is actually good and has good intentions for us, sometimes we can judge them based on the something, color of their skin or their religion or something. And our judgment didn't allow us to see their essence and their good nature and intentions towards us. So we're actually hindering our discernments by imposing these judgments and these labels onto things. But what I was saying earlier is that when we look at the world with the eyes of a baby, we see the true beauty of everything. We see that it holds a lot more life than we've been giving it credit for. Everything becomes alive. And the contemplative path is one that you pay deep attention to things around you. You refrain from labeling things as you see them. Oh, that's a lamp. Oh, that's a wall. Oh, that's a tree. Oh, that's a book. Oh, what go on, and so on and so forth. You really just imagine as if you've never seen that thing before. Even if it's a tree outside your window that you look at every day, try looking at it next time you look at that tree. Try not labeling it as a tree outside my window. Just look at it as if you've never looked at it before. And what it does when you do that, the reason we even want to partake in a contemplative path or even seek to live in this manner, the reason we want to do that is for spiritual transformation and evolution. When we look at something without labeling it, we start seeing its essence underneath the form that is disguised as, and we can see the eternal oneness that that thing embodies, that we also embody, and which in one tradition could be called God. Eckhart Tolle calls it being. Whatever name you give to it, that oneness of life becomes clear to us when we look at something very deeply and we refrain from labeling it. So the mystery of life starts revealing itself to us when we don't impose our own judgments on the world. And instead of saying things are what I think they are, instead of having that stance, we instead have a stance of I allow things to be as they are to reveal to me what they are, instead of me telling them what they are based on my judgments, based on my past experiences. I allow things to reveal to me their true nature, and in that manner, my own true nature will be revealed to me in due time. And so the contemplative path is one that you go about your day, you go about your life, and you don't mentally identify things as you see them based on your past experiences. It's like you remove the element of time from your life and you're fully in this present moment. The contemplative path or the contemplative way of being is a present moment awareness way of being, is a way of being where you are fully in this present moment. People who have taken psychedelics or a newborn baby would attest to this thing that happens when you look at a thing and you feel like you've never seen it before. Even though if it's like I said, a tree outside your window that you see every day, you look at it and you're like, I have never truly seen this before because I've never been this present in this state of presence and have looked at it. Because when you are truly present, labels come from the past. Somebody said trees are these things that look like this, and we call these trees. As humans, we get conditioned and programmed and taught what things are, which is nothing bad. There's no evil intent there, but it's just it deadens those things because they become concepts in our mind. When we look at it from a completely present moment awareness, removed from the past, we don't say, oh, that's a tree like the one I saw 2 days ago, and they're of the same family of trees and so on and so forth. You don't go into all these mental information about them. You just see it as it is. And I use this example of tree because A, it's part of nature, and to me, things that have an origin of nature, in other words, are not man-made, they reveal something even deeper when we look at them contemplatively versus things that are man-made. Now, true contemplation doesn't even say, oh, man-made, you know, God-made, so to speak, or nature. Everything becomes one when you really are in that state. You don't even see separateness anymore. But what I was saying is, like, that tree, becomes a different thing to you, um, and a thing of immense beauty and value. Even if it's a dead tree, you literally can look at a dead tree. Right now as I'm shooting this video, it's like a day before the winter solstice. So we're about to step into winter. So all the trees, most trees don't have leaves on them as I look outside the window here. And still, when you look at it contemplatively, you can see an essence, a value to that tree, to that thing, and allow that thing to reveal a depth about life to you that you may have not been able to grasp and see and perceive when you're just going about your life at a fast pace and you're rushing through things and you're not really paying attention and you're labeling things and you're like killing them mentally in your head, and you're deadening them instead of noticing their aliveness, even if they're dead, so to speak, like a dead tree. Um, so the value of the contemplative path is that it's one that we can integrate into our day-to-day life. It's a stance that we can choose of our own volition to take as we go about our day. So, when we set out to go out into the world or even just, hang out at the house, like, today is Sunday as I'm shooting this, so I'm not really going out anywhere. But as I'm just going about my day-to-day life, making coffee, reading a book, or, just sitting there, drinking my cup of coffee, paying attention to my surroundings, as I'm sitting there, I can choose to take the stance about my day, about my life, where I just fully pay attention to things and I refrain from labeling them as I've known them before. So if I'm looking at a wall, a simple wall without any like drawings or anything on it, I can just really be with that, and not say, well, that's nothing interesting. I would much rather just like scroll on my Instagram feed where there's like bunch of like information and like exciting images and videos and like loud noises. Like that would be a lot more exciting to look at than this like wall. But the depth of life and meaning and profoundness that staring at a wall can reveal to you when you're in that contemplative stance might be deeper, and most certainly will be deeper than anything spiritual even that you like read on Instagram or like YouTube or whatever. um, Even this video, as you're watching it, it's like after this video, just sit down and just look at like your surroundings. So if you're like if you're laying down on a bed, or you're sitting down at your desktop computer or whatever it might be, like just sit there and just pay attention to your surroundings and pay attention to your breath. Not this like forceful attention of like, I gotta pay attention to my breath, because I know I sometimes do that too when I'm trying to be contemplative, and then I become so rigid, like, oh my god, I forgot to pay attention to that last inhale and exhale, and now I lost it. Now I gotta get back into it. No, like it's a gentle approach towards life. It's a gentle way of being. It's not like this like meditation. You can actually say is a lot more aggressive in nature, because you're more like focused on a certain thing, whether it be a mantra or your breath or whatever it might be. Like you're more focused, whereas contemplation is more like a yin stance towards life. It's a more feminine stance towards life. Whereas you can say like meditation is more of a masculine. Meditation is more of a focused oriented thing. In most cases, I'm not saying all meditation is like that, but contemplation is more like a feminine way of being in the world, where it's more receptive. It's like let's let me allow the world and the things around me to reveal their meaning to me, versus me imposing my will on them and my meaning on them and my judgments on them. So it's more like a receiving stance versus a meditation where it's more like, let me like go through or like focus on one thing very specific, very focused, which could be like called a very yang way of being, a very masculine way of being, energetically. So contemplation and its value is super important if we seek transformation, if we seek spiritual evolution. Its value is very important in our day-to-day life, in today's world and society, especially because we live such busy lives, you know. And at the beginning of COVID, you know, in March and April, when lockdowns were heavily enforced, and you know, in some places still are, during that time, you know, it's like a lot of people were forced into this like stillness in a way. But for most of the time, we are a very fast-paced culture and world. You know, it doesn't even really matter what part of the world you're in. Everywhere is pretty fast-paced, and we go throughout our life, and rarely do we bring the stillness and the awareness that, you know, if you have a meditation practice, rarely do we bring that stillness and awareness that we experience during our meditation into our day-to-day life, and allow that stillness to cause a massive transformation into our lives, into our hearts, and into our beings. And eventually help us live a more spiritual life, not by separating spirituality from our life and saying spirituality belongs on the cushion, on my, you know, on my meditation cushion in the morning, but spirituality can infuse all parts of my life. It can bring life and aliveness into all aspects of my life, into all things I do within a day, by being more contemplative as I go about my life, being more still, being more present, paying more attention to things around me. So oftentimes, you know, I have a kind of mantra that I've gotten from Course in Miracles that says, teach only what you will learn. So when I'm making these videos, one of my main focuses is to teach only what I want to incorporate into my life, have incorporated into my life, or want to incorporate more so into my life. And contemplation and being contemplative is one of those things that I really do want to incorporate more into my life. And another way of saying that is like, I just want to incorporate more stillness into my life. And right now, as I'm shooting this, it's December, and December usually, and going into winter, just tends to make me want to be more still. I started losing interest to, you know, read a lot of books or do a lot of, you know, outward things. I want to go more inward. So as I'm teaching or talking about this because I also want to learn it too. It's like, teach what you would learn. And so I found that for me, as I've been wanting to and desiring more to be more contemplative as I go about my days, I've tried to incorporate moments where I just take a breath, slow things down. Like even that just felt amazing. Because talking can sometimes get us out of that. That's why a lot of like retreats, people go on silent retreats, because talking can get us more into the realm of concepts and words and language, which is kind of heady, versus just being in quiet and being in solitude and being in silence. So actually, let me take one of those good pranas, as Ralph Smart says it. And so yeah, like I just try to take a breath, you know, as I'm going about my day, and desiring to cultivate that internal stance of contemplation, having that desire in and of itself, and having that intention, you know, it reminds you, okay, you're getting lost into the day. And this, you know, being contemplative doesn't mean you don't go to work, doesn't mean you don't focus on doing things that are means to an end. You know, when you're at work, you have to accomplish certain tasks. Like, it doesn't mean you don't do those things. It just means you do everything that you have to do, but you do it from a place of being more present to the moment. And as I've said, Eckhart Tolle is a phenomenal teacher. In my opinion, the best teacher to teach this. Another phenomenal contemporary icon for this way of being that I've recently become very fascinated with his work is Thomas Merton. And another person who talks about Thomas Merton really well, his name is James Finley. And I'll link some audiobooks or audio programs from him about contemplation and what he learned from Thomas Merton down below, because I've been listening to some of those as I'm sitting there, in the morning, drinking my coffee, listening to him. It's like it helps to hear people who live in that state, how they feel, because then when you feel it, you're like, oh, this is what Eckhart Tolle talks about. I remember the first time, I remember this vividly, where and this was like years ago, and it's like we sometimes just need a glimpse of a moment of contemplative existence and being, and being truly present. We just need a moment of it. And then we might spend the rest of our time chasing after that moment, trying to have more moments like that. And I think that's the beauty of having a moment like that, is that it gives you a roadmap. And that's why I love listening to people like Eckhart Tolle and James Finley and Thomas Merton, because it does give me like, oh, that's like a glimpse, so I can see. So when I experience it myself, I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about. But I remember vividly, the first time I had read books by Eckhart Tolle, but never had actual experience being present, I would say, in a way, to the degree that he explains it. And I remember the first time that I was super present and I saw a tree. The reason I keep bringing up trees is because they were the first time where I truly have a contemplative experience, where I looked at a tree that I had looked at before, and this tree was like moving in the wind, and I was completely still and present inside, and I wasn't like saying that's a tree, I wasn't labeling, I was just like in the moment, and I was like, I never realized how beautiful life is and everything is. I've never been still enough to see the beauty of life, and then to see the oneness of all life. Because when you spend time in that present state, in that contemplative mode of being, eventually what ends up happening is that you start recognizing oneness with all things, with all beings. And in true moments of intimacy, we also feel this, where you look at the person whom you love, and it's almost like there's no separation between us. And there's not something, this is not like a concept where you like, oh, everything is one, oneness, da da da. Like, as a concept, it becomes a subjective experience. And that's why contemplation is such an important path towards transformation, because contemplation gives you an experience of spiritual concepts, of God himself. And who needs theory when you have a direct experience of divinity? And I think the goal of all spirituality should be, and I think in its essence was, like, I think every prophet, who has a religion named after them, they really lived that contemplative stance and way of being. And a lot of times their followers, might have lost it because they never glanced the reality that teacher was trying to point to. Like, for example, Jesus, he lived in that state. So he was trying to help other people, his students, his followers, to live in that state as well. But I think a lot of times throughout history that got lost. And I'm not saying theology is not good. Both are important. We need the words, we need the concepts of God, we need the spirituality, and theology and words and language. We need all that. But in the face of an experience, an actual experience, a true experience of divinity, of God, then those words don't matter anymore. And that's why I think a lot of people who really sought spirituality throughout, time, like monks and Christian monks and people that really wanted to have an experience of God, They would go into solitude, they would go into quiet, because they knew that that's going to lead them to an experience of God, where once you have one of those experiences, then everything you learned about God all of a sudden stops being a dead concept that you memorize and learned, but a real living experience, and that leads to transformation. So contemplation as a path to take in our life, as spiritual seekers, it's one of the most powerful paths to lead to transformation, um, because it incorporates all the elements that would lead to transformation, to having a true experience of God, of divinity, of oneness. That once you have once, you're transformed. You're not the same person that was living and breathing before you had that moment. That moment. That's why Jesus says you have to be born again. That's a moment of being born again. It's like you're rebirth. You just had a rebirth. You literally were born again, and you experienced life in a new way, as if you just came out into the world. It's like a new thing entirely when you have one of those moments that contemplation leads to. So as a path of transformation, spiritual transformation, it's one of the most powerful things that we can do, and a path that we can take. The contemplative path, we can incorporate into our day-to-day life by just having our intention be to be more still, be more present, bring more silence into our lives internally, even though outside of us there might be a lot of noise. Because silence and stillness is something that we cultivate internally. And Eckhart Tolle calls it space, like we create space inside of us. So even though outside of us, as it is right now in 2020, like the world seems crazy, we can be the calm stillness amidst the storms. We can cultivate that spaciousness, that stillness, that space inside ourselves. And as we go through our days contemplatively, we bring that stillness into everything we do. So if I'm typing an email at work, if I'm getting on a call, if I'm driving, if I'm washing my face, brushing my teeth in the morning, like whatever it might be, I can bring that stillness, that contemplation is pointing to, and it's asking for us to do, the contemplative path. I can bring that into all elements of my life, and in that way, I can let all things in my life transform me, instead of one short period of time in the morning, aka our meditation. In the morning, 20 minutes on the meditation cushion, that being the only source of transformation. I talk about a lot of things on this channel, like Enneagram, A Course in Miracles, meditation, shadow work, all these things. But all of those, involve elements that lead to true transformation, that all of those elements are involved in living contemplatively. Because all transformation requires awareness. Contemplative living requires awareness. That's the first step. You have to be aware. All of them require stillness. They require presence. You have to be aware. You have to be still. You have to be with what is. You have to be truly in the moment. You have to be present, and you have to be honest with what the moment is versus what I want it to be, what I label it as. I have to just truly be honest with what this moment is. Now, mentally, you have to be present to see the honesty of the moment. And these are the ingredients of transformation. Self-knowledge, all these things come from stillness. Creativity comes from stillness. And transformation comes from stillness. And contemplative way of being brings stillness into our day-to-day life and allows our life to become the school that it's meant to be. Every single thing, every single encounter can now teach us things that we didn't know about ourselves, that we didn't know about life. And eventually, everything in life, our lives, become a remembrance of God, of divinity, of the oneness of all life. When you are having a conversation with someone and you're truly present in the moment, it's like the veil lifts that is creating the illusion of there's a me and there's a them. Of course, yes, there is a me and there's a them on a certain level, but we know on a quantum physics level, it's all one. There's no separation. So contemplation leads us to an experience of like that, of that state. And then next time you read a spiritual book and it's talking about God, it's talking about the universe, it's talking about oneness, these are not just some words to you anymore. These are experiences that you've had and you know what it's talking about. You read words from Jesus and you're like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. You are reborn, you are rebirthed. So all these things that, for example, for me, Jesus is my spiritual teacher. I would say when I read his words and I've had an experience of contemplative being and living and being still in the moment, you understand what he's saying. All these birds who are just simply living and being in the moment are more beautiful than Solomon in all his glory. But you are still even more beautiful in the eyes of God. So it's like it helps you get what they were trying to teach. And until you've cultivated that internal stance of contemplation, you are not going to be able to grasp the realities that they're pointing to, because it's just one of those things that you have to go there to know what it is. It's like if you've never had a burger and someone can do the best job they can to explain to you what a burger is and what it's like and what it tastes like, but until you've had a burger, you're not going to know what a burger is like, and it's just like that. These teachers are like, they're trying to teach us, hey, it's like this. The kingdom of God, stillness is like this. And they're constantly having to use metaphors and analogies and stuff like that to explain it. But then once you have that experience, then the words become, I don't want to say, they just become unneeded. I was going to say, they're not going to become useless. They're super important. They're pointers, but they become unneeded. So I highly encourage you all to spend a day, spend an hour in an internal stance of contemplation. Make it your intention to be more contemplative as you go throughout your life, as you go throughout your day, and watch your world transform in front of your eyes. And obviously, this is not just like a one-time thing, the quick fix. Oh, I just was contemplative one day and then boom, I'm enlightened. No, people go through years of living in a monastery and things like that to glimpse some of these realities, but we can bring that into our life, and we can have every day be a moment that leads to God. So I highly encourage you guys to bring contemplation, bring stillness into your life, and highly recommend to check out the books and audio programs below that I have tagged, as they have been some of the programs and books that have helped me glimpse that state. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this about all things spiritual and all things that I believe will be helpful for you, because they have been helpful for me, if you want to see more things like that, please subscribe to my channel. New videos every week. And I'm just so happy to have you guys watching this video. So thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye.